Discipleship Week 2020 talk number 3. My name is Beth Peterson. If we haven't met before, I am a creative writing professor from the US, and I've been involved with the Navigators for about 20 years. So I'm going to begin this talk by telling you a story. This story is about the very first time I flew to Norway. It's also the very first time I flew alone. So I was supposed to be taking a flight from Chicago to London to Bergen. It's supposed to be pretty easy, which was a good thing because it was before the time of international cell phones. I also didn't know the number or the name of the people that were picking me up in the Bergen airport. I was just told by the navigators that someone would pick me up. Now when I look back, I think, oh, that was crazy to go with no phone and no phone number, but at the time I thought I would be fine. So at first I was fine. The flight left Chicago, easy sailing, smooth sailing. I even got some sleep on the flight. But when we got to England, there started to be some turbulence, enough that I got a little concerned. I was watching the little flight tracker on the seat back in front of me, and I noticed that the plane started going north instead of heading straight east to London. The captain didn't say anything over the loudspeaker. There were no announcements, so I thought, I'm sure it'll be fine. So I settled back in my chair. Suddenly, we had landed, but people around me were starting to say, "We're not in London." And finally, the guy in front of me said, "We're in Manchester." So I didn't know very much about English geography at the time, but I did know that Manchester was not a suburb of London. So I got off the plane with everybody else. I stood in line. I talked to the gate agent, and I said, "When's your next flight to Bergen?" And he said, "We're not flying to Bergen for 3 days." I said, 3 days? I need to get to Bergen. He said, "Well, let me take a look at your ticket, and I'll see what I can do." So he took my ticket, and he left. So I waited maybe 10 minutes, and then 20, and then maybe after half an hour, 40 minutes, I went back up to the counter, and there was a woman up there, and I said, a guy left with my ticket. And she said, "Oh, he went home for the day." And I said, "Well, where's my ticket?" And this was the time of paper tickets. She said, "I have no idea." And I said, "Well, I need to get to Bergen." And she said, "I can't get you to Bergen without a ticket." And I said, "Well, where's my luggage?" She said, "Well, let me make a phone call." So she makes a phone call, and she says, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we don't know where your luggage is." So here I am in Manchester with no luggage and no ticket for a few hours, and then 8 hours, and then suddenly 12 hours. And then I've been in Manchester for ages. So I tell you this story because I feel as though in this season, many of us find ourselves in a similar situation. We've landed in a destination that we never intended to go to, and we have no ticket. COVID has radically upended our world. Even a year ago, it would have been unfathomable to think there would be a global pandemic. I'm videoing in from the US, where racism and George Floyd's murder have upended society. Again, even a few months ago, it would have been unfathomable to be thinking that the whole US would be watching a video of a man having his neck kneeled on by a police officer for 8 minutes until that man died. Back in October, one of the people that I was closest to in all the world died of cancer. I remember telling another friend that it was unfathomable. I couldn't imagine my life without her. So when Steve McClure, one of the organizers of this conference, asked me to give a talk, he said it would be on the idea of God being unfathomable. And at first, my honest response was, "Oh no, I don't need one more unfathomable thing. This doesn't feel comforting." So I did what a good literature and creative writing professor does. I thought, okay, I'm going to look in the text, in this case the Bible, and see what references I can find to unfathomable. In my translation of the Bible, there were only 5, so not a lot of references. I'm going to read you 3 of them, and we'll focus on the 3rd. So Psalm 92:5, "How great are your works, O Lord! Your thoughts are unfathomable." Romans 11:33, "How unsearchable are his judgments, and unfathomable his ways." And the last one, Job 9:10, "He does great and unfathomable things, wonders without number." So if you don't know the story of Job, it's a story about a man who lost everything. He lost his wife, he lost his children, he lost his house, he lost his job. So he had nothing. So the question became, was Job going to keep his faith, or was he going to curse God? Job's friends suggested that he get it over with and just curse God. And they really asked him, how can you believe in a God who lets bad things happen to good people? So we don't tend to curse things when something goes wrong. We don't curse our house when our air conditioner goes out. We don't curse our friends' homes or our friends' parents when they make us angry. But we too have similarly unhealthy responses to pain. So as I was thinking about some of the responses to pain that are less healthy, a few came to mind. Sometimes we become cynical or pessimistic, unwilling to believe in a better future. Sometimes we become sarcastic instead of genuine. Sometimes we numb ourselves on entertainment, Fortnite, Netflix. Instead of just entertainment, it becomes a compulsion for us. Sometimes we become sarcastic and cynical and numb and compulsive all at the same time. Sometimes it's just one of those things. So what was Job's response? Job's response was to ask God for a reason why. Why is this happening to me? And that seems like a pretty natural response. So something interesting happens though, something surprising. When Job asks that question, God answers. But he doesn't answer that question. He answers a different question. This often happens in the Bible. God answers people who ask, but he doesn't always answer with the thing that we think he's going to answer. So Job asks with his felt need, the need that he feels is most important, which is a reason why. But God answers his real need. So what is God's answer? God answers by listing all sorts of things that he's created. Crocodiles, lotus trees, mountains. It's a very specific, very long list. It goes on and on. So Job suddenly gets it. He hears this list. And in the end, he says something really interesting. In Job 42:3, we hear Job's reply. He says, "Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me." It really surprised me this week when I was looking at that phrase, things too wonderful for me. What Job is saying is that suddenly he realizes God is unfathomable, and that's comforting to him. So why? What about God being unfathomable is comforting? So originally the word fathom was used as a depth measurement. It meant to measure an ocean. It had a fathom. So a fathom was thought to be the span of someone's outstretched arms. Initially that was thought to be about 6 feet. And I think about my arms and I think surely they're not 6 feet. So perhaps it's a taller person than me. But that was the span of outstretched arms. But it had a couple other meanings too. Fathom also meant to get to the bottom of things, and it meant embrace. One last thing, it also meant capacity. So capacity, embrace, get to the bottom of things, the span of outstretched arms, the depth. So really interesting. One more thing I want to note about this word. The and unfathomable doesn't mean non or not. This word is a sort of superlative. What that means is it means beyond, so much that it's spilling over. So much depth, so much capacity, so much embrace. So I found this really interesting and helpful. In the midst of COVID and world upheaval, cancer, God's promise to us is this: depth, capacity, ability to get to the bottom of things, embrace. Ultimately, what's unfathomable is his presence, a presence that invites us to depth instead of shallowness, that invites us to peace instead of anxiety, that invites us to hopeful expectation instead of cynicism, and ultimately invites us to join him in the redemptive work of fixing what's broken instead of only lamenting it. So I want to tell you one more story. And this story is about a time, another travel time for me. And so this time, there were 3 people. I was traveling with 2 other friends, and I was being driven in a car by an unnamed driver who may be giving one of these talks. The 2 friends were Stephen Hartwell and Kat Thompson, in case you've ever met them. So we were supposed to be leaving from Gatwick Airport in London and flying to France. If you know Gatwick Airport, you know that it's a super busy, super big airport, one of the busiest airports in the world. So the driver of this car began driving us towards London. It felt to me like the drive was taking a long time, but I'm not from England, so who was I to question the driver? However, it turns out actually the driver had missed the Gatwick turn. Later, blame would be laid on various people for distracting him. But in any case, we had missed the turn. So by the time we made it to Gatwick, we had 25 minutes before our flight took off. So Stephen, Kat, and I rushed up to the ticket counter and said, "Our flight is taking off in 20 minutes. The ticket agent said, "I don't think you're going to make it, but you can try sprinting." So that's what we did. We began to sprint with all our luggage towards the gate. So in that process, Stephen lost his phone. I lost my shoes. I don't know if Kat lost anything. We probably all lost some weight from moving so quickly through the Gatwick airport. But I noticed something different than my Manchester experience. In Manchester, I felt afraid, anxious. I felt like I just don't know what I'm going to do. Here, I didn't feel those things. It might have been the endorphins. I was running so quickly, but I think there was something else too. It was the presence of my friends that changed everything. I knew whatever happened, I was going to be with Stephen and Kat, so I was going to be okay. So as I've been preparing this talk, I've been thinking how much more the presence of Christ, who holds all things, who holds all wisdom, all understanding, all power, can change us and sometimes our circumstances. So wherever you are today, I pray that the Lord's unfathomableness is wisdom to you. I pray you see it as depth and capacity, especially when your own capacity has run out. And most of all, I pray that you feel the outstretched arms as embrace.